Caleb Bond in for James Morrow this week, and Brianna Lyman up in a minute to talk about New York Mayor Eric Adams being indicted on federal charges. Now, one of the more bizarre stories to come out of this election campaign is that a 31-year-old magazine reporter reportedly had some kind of relationship with the 70-year-old Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, bear with me here because it is a wild ride. But reporter Oliver Darcy dropped in his media newsletter Status that New York Magazine had suspended its Washington correspondent Olivia Nuzzi because it had become aware of an alleged romantic relationship with someone she'd interviewed, and that was RFK Jr. She then admitted it without mentioning RFK, saying that earlier this year the nature of some communication between herself and a former reporting subject turned personal. During that time, I did not directly report on the subject nor use them as a source. The relationship was never physical, but should have been disclosed to prevent the appearance of a conflict. Kennedy, of course, was running for president as an independent before he defected to the Trump campaign. A spokesman for Kennedy said that they had only ever met once. Well, Puck News reported that she had sent him explicit photos, and then along comes blogger Jessica Reed Krause, who'd been following RFK Jr.'s campaign and became friends with Ms Nuzzi. She wrote, "Friends of Kennedy believe Nuzzi set him up. They recount that just 2 weeks after New York Magazine published her article, she made a flirtatious remark during a phone conversation. In response, Kennedy blocked her number. A few weeks later, Nuzzi emailed him asking to be unblocked, claiming she had urgent information about a hit piece being prepared against him. He unblocked her for that conversation, but later that night she sent him a provocative picture, prompting him to block her again. For most of the next 8 months, Kennedy kept her blocked, except for a few occasions when Nuzzi contacted him from different emails and phone numbers, insisting he unblock her for urgent discussions about an imminent hit piece. Once unblocked, she bombarded him with increasingly pornographic photos and videos that he found difficult to resist. After brief exchanges, he would block her again." Amazing stuff, isn't it? Next was the Daily Beast, which reported that the whole thing had come to light because RFK Jr. had bragged to friends about the explicit photos, and it eventually got back to Ms Nuzzi's boss. Apparently it was never physical, but it did involve exchanging explicit images. This presidential campaign does not disappoint. Joining us now is Brianna Lyman, elections correspondent at The Federalist. Brianna, what do you make of all this stuff between Nuzzi and RFK Jr.? It's just extraordinary.
Yeah, you would think that in the middle of this campaign cycle, where you have one candidate who doesn't even want to answer questions to the press and another one who's nearly been assassinated twice, that they'd have more to focus on. But instead, here we are talking about RFK Jr. and Olivia Nuzzi. And I would argue that the reason there's such a focus on RFK Jr. is that there's a smear campaign going on against him. Because he defected, like you said, to the Trump campaign and he endorsed Donald Trump, people want to, do whatever they can to detract from RFK's legitimate points about both the Democratic Party and about what needs to be done for America, like make America healthy again. And there's no better way to do that than distract with these, worthless stories about an affair that he allegedly had that was never physical, that at the end of the day doesn't really move the needle one way or another for this election.
It's incredible, isn't it? Now, huge news this week. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has been indicted on federal charges of bribery and fraud, notably accepting illegal campaign contributions, allegedly, and luxury travel from Turkish nationals. We understand he's going to enter a not guilty plea. He maintains his innocence. Here's what he had to say.
"It is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies."
This would make him the first mayor in modern New York history to be charged while in office. Mr. Adams says he's not going to go anywhere while all of this unfolds. What's the background here?
Yeah, so Eric Adams, prior to becoming New York City's mayor, he was the borough president of Brooklyn. And before that, he was a state senator. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So, the allegations against Eric Adams are not necessarily new allegation in terms of alleged corruption. I've spoken to friends who currently serve in New York's legislature, and they say that when Eric Adams was state senator, he was allegedly involved in, pay to play schemes, other alleged corruption, incidents. So it's not like this just came out of nowhere. His, inner circle has been in the eye of authorities for more than a year now for similar allegations that they've also been kind of brought in for. With Eric Adams in particular, I hope that he doesn't resign. I hope that Governor Kathy Hochul does not seek to remove him, which she can if she wanted to, because the second person in line to hold that office right now is Jumaane Williams. He's our public advocate in New York City. He is a far left socialist person who does not belong anywhere near that position of power. So I hope Eric Adams stays to, sticks his ground, says that he's innocent until proven guilty, and lets the judicial process play out as it should.
I have to say, from an Australian perspective, the idea of a leader staying in situ while there is an investigation like this going on or charges being levelled against you is extraordinary. I mean, it just doesn't happen here. We have cases, multiple cases, where premiers have come up before anti-corruption inquiries, and the minute there was any allegation, they were gone. They resigned. I've got to step aside. Obviously, it doesn't work like that, or at least they don't do that so readily in America.
Yeah, and thank God. The reason I say that is because America is one of the, a unique situation where you are innocent until proven guilty. And nobody should be forced to face punishment, so to speak, such as, having to step down or being removed from their post just because there are allegations against them. And if you take Donald Trump as, the pinnacle of all this, this man has been the victim of multiple lawfare campaigns. If we had a standard where somebody had to step down or couldn't run for office just because allegations were, lodged against them, Donald Trump wouldn't be in the position he is right now, being the Republican frontrunner. And it's important because we know that 2 of the lawfare cases have already been tossed out. Right, that they had no grounds. Jack Smith wasn't even supposed to have brought them in the classified documents case, all this stuff. So Donald Trump has been vindicated time and time again. So I think it's important that Americans allow people to continue on in their capacity because they are innocent until someone can prove that they're guilty.
Now, each week we get more evidence of how the Democrats just seem to have no idea what's going on. Here we have Biden saying that Harris had responsibility for most things.
As vice president, there wasn't a single thing that I did that she couldn't do. And so I was able to delegate her responsibility on everything from foreign policy to domestic policy.
But here is Harris discrediting all of those policies that Biden, quote unquote, delegated to her.
We just need to move past the failed policies that we have proven don't work.
I mean, the Trump war room may as well give up. They don't have to write anything.
Yeah, she's not only throwing herself under the bus, but Biden and his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, have consistently made sure to remind the American public that Kamala Harris is, of course, tethered to the Biden-Harris administration. And I think that Biden even has more of an onus to do that, considering he was ousted via a coup allegedly led in part by Kamala. So he has more reason to do this. And I think Kamala finds herself between a rock and a hard place because there's only one of 2 buckets that she falls into, so to speak. The first is that Kamala had nothing to do with the past 4 years, which means as vice president, she sat by, sat on her hands and did nothing while this country burned. If that's the case, that's disqualifying, right? A leader knows when to take action, knows when to step up, knows when to get rid of your commander-in-chief when he's cognitively declining. The other option is that Kamala Harris, which is true, was intimately involved in what the administration did because she was vice president. She was delegated responsibilities for elections, for border, and she failed.
Very quickly before we go, we saw the numbers this week on campaign donations, and what it's shown is that Google and Microsoft are donating huge amounts of money to the Democratic Party. They control nearly 100% of what we use on the internet, and now they want to control the government as well, it looks like, Brianna.
Yeah, we don't necessarily need this data to confirm what we know. If you go back just to July, 13th through 17th, if you went to Google and you search assassination attempt on T, The first hit was assassination attempt on Truman. Second one was assassination attempt on the Pope. The top 10 hits did not even include Donald Trump. And so Google has had this huge monopoly on information that is shared and spread. Recently, they encouraged people to go out and register to vote. And if you clicked on the link, it takes you back to Democracy Works. Democracy Works is part of Democrats' well-funded and well-oiled election machine. That's not a nonpartisan avenue, that's a partisan avenue. And Google controls and directs users to there.
Brianna Lyman, thank you so much for your time.